Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And now we know why.
Oh, shocker.
Your series was canceled.
I mean, then surprise to no one.
Surprise to no one. We're going to talk about why The Last Man having a steep decline in viewership after the initial launch, which led to its cancellation. Again,
Shocker.
Huge shocker because there were many changes made to the comics. A lot of comics fans did not like the changes, and yeah, it is what it is, and this is going to be a lesson learned, I think, for Hollywood. It also shows that you don't count your chickens before they're hatched unless it's Halo and you greenlight the season 2.
Yeah, and we already know how that's going to turn out.
So we're going to talk about this and how it dovetails with some other series that have gotten canceled that had big pushes at the beginning, big numbers at the beginning, like Cowboy Bebop. But then the execs probably took a look at the viewership numbers over time and took a look at the expense.
And the backlash.
And they're like, yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
If only Amazon listened.
If only Amazon listened, yeah. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, finally over 258,000 subs. I think we're almost at 259 already.
For real?
Yeah, we actually had a little bit of a boost.
Yay.
A boost. Our numbers are better than Why the Last Man's.
I don't know about that.
No, I don't know about that either. But yeah, so this is coming from the Hollywood Reporter. It's been spread about here. Comicbook.com had it. But we finally know why was canceled.
I'm just surprised they're admitting to it. I guess it's only shocker here. Isn't that why it's canceled? It's that they admitted to why it was canceled.
Yeah. And I think that we're starting to see, again, we talk about that pendulum swing, or I talk about it probably too much, but I think executives are finally starting to see that social media buzz does not necessarily translate into tangible numbers.
And it's because a property has fans with it. If you make a bunch of changes and put it as a show, it doesn't mean that you're going to bring that audience with it if you change too much.
Right. And there were a lot of changes to the show. A lot of comic fans didn't like it, but let's go out and read this. Hollywood Reporter, Why the Last Man, steep decline in viewers helped fuel cancellation. It doesn't matter how much buzz it gets. It doesn't matter how many retweets or upvotes.
Yeah, or how many check boxes that you check for, diversity, inclusion initiatives reasons.
How many times you get your favorite cartoon show trending on Twitter. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're like, does this have an audience or not? And are we going to, sell advertising, sell merchandise or not? And they decided no.
Yeah, they don't just make it out of the goodness of their heart to please you and your 5 friends.
Yep. So the network head of FX, John Landgraf, says the show fell off sharply over the course of its lone season. So they said it came as a surprise it got canceled, both because one and done is usually not FX's MO. That's true. They actually thought they were going to have, 3-4 seasons out of it. And because the comic book adaptation went through such a long road to make it on air.
Okay.
Maybe they should have.
That's one way of saying we changed so much that was unrecognizable.
Maybe they should have stayed a little bit closer to the comic book material. FX chairman John Landgraf said Thursday he wasn't happy about the call, but a really steep decline in audience over the course of the show's run led to the cancellation.
And anybody surprised?
Nobody's surprised.
Nobody's surprised.
People working on the show were surprised. Twitter is surprised. Why the Last Man streamed on FX's hub on Hulu, so detailed audience information isn't available. Well, this is Disney, so Disney's going to look at that. And again, this might be the Chapek effect. This might be the one good thing that Bob Chapek does, is he just looks at numbers. I
guess it's helpful here.
Yeah.
Well, here's what Landgraf said. One of the key things we assess and have assessed is the trajectory of show across the season from the first episode to the last episode. I really love it personally. I really admired all the work that went into it, but its audience decline was really, really steep. Not just one really, 2 reallys. Really, really steep.
Yeah, that is actually kind of surprising for an executive to come right out and say, hey, yeah, the show failed.
Well, you know what? It can make sense. Because they were like, punch and bag these people. Like, how dare you cancel it? You're against diversity and inclusion. You're misogynistic and all this shit. And he's just basically like, no, we canceled it because it didn't perform. The audience was like not there. And it just really, really, really dropped off.
Yeah.
I mean, I added it really, but you know.
Yeah, and this is kind of the unified theory of everything here. And we had, 4 or 5 years where I think a lot of showrunners got a pass, because they kept kind of insisting, I think, to the network executives that, like, if you just give it, 4 or 5 seasons or just commit to this, that, eventually we're going to find our audience. And any more during the streaming era, like, if you don't come out of the gate swinging, you're done.
You can quote unquote find your audience, but if your audience is very small, you found your audience, but it didn't help the network any.
Yeah,
it
doesn't help sell toys. Maybe maybe your
Look
audience.
at you, She-Ra.
Yeah, maybe your audience harasses people online, and that's what they're known for.
Yeah, look at you, Cowboy Bebop too.
Yeah,
and here's the thing, we're talking about all this, and I'm worried about Amazon. Like, they're going to do that new She-Ra show, and Amazon is the one that's doing the stuff with Lord of the Rings and all that. And I'm worried because we already saw how they're pushing the diversity inclusion initiatives with the Lord of the Rings show. I'm genuinely worried about what they're going to do with the She-Ra show that nobody wants at this point. I'm hoping they rethink that and pull back. If the Lord of the Rings fails, which is probably going to.
Yeah.
But we need these networks to start looking at this and being like, well, if it's not working, we're not going to keep feeding it, for one. And two, maybe we should stop taking existing properties at all. But if we're going to take an existing property, maybe we should need to make sure that we're actually, faithful to said property.
Yeah.
And then maybe the audience will follow.
Yeah. And, again, having people working on your shows, and I'm not saying why in particular, there was a little bit of controversy, not a whole lot. Basically, nobody gave a shit.
Yeah, no one cared.
I mean, the comic kind of peaked 7 or 8 years ago.
I think the premise was like, oh, God, people rolling their eyes. Because that's what I did. I'm like...
Well, Twitter was rolling its eyes, too, because they're like, well, your chromosomes don't determine if you're male or female. And that was a huge issue, and they had to change all that for the show. And that kind of like undermined the whole... point of the show, but yeah, so it's one of those things where they're just gonna have to look at numbers. I mean, studios have to go back. I mean, we talked about what happened with the actress that was cast as America Chavez, and they need to stop listening to Twitter because Twitter is not indicative of the real world. And again, coming back to She-Ra, they try to get more of the cartoon show made, but one, animation is incredibly expensive. And two, just because you get it trending on Twitter doesn't mean these executives, because they're going to look at the numbers and be like, no, this is what we spent. This is what the viewership was by the last episode. It ain't working, guys.
Well, speaking of which, they're trying very hard to get it back, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and we're going to say thanks to TocoStar for this one, EW went and put this article up. It's going to be on their print edition and everything else, about a show that ended 2 years ago that, let's be honest here, most people didn't even watch. And it wasn't even like a trending show most of the time. And they're trying to talk about how it's the greatest romance in TV animation. Well, one, no, it wasn't the greatest romance in TV animation. It was the greatest romance to the people that are pushing for agendas. But beyond that, it was a very toxic relationship. This reminds me of Raylo's, like, in the toxicity.
Yeah, like...
And the fan base has been very toxic. To both the show people and other fans. It's caused a huge division in the fandom with their PR spin and the way that people behaved around the show. It's not one that you should probably bring back. If they're wanting to bring back a She-Ra show, I would recommend that you go with something closer to the original show. You might sell some toys then, too.
Catra belongs in prison. She belongs in prison.
Everything's forgiven because their kiss saved the universe.
They're best friends now.
Because it was the greatest romance in TV animation history, according to the people on Twitter. And again, Twitter is not indicative of the real world, so that's why they're going to places like Entertainment Weekly trying to get it out there, because they're trying to flag a bigger audience. But it's 2 years ago. It's over. Move on. Yeah.
Now, what could be happening here, right? And again, this is not to derail talking about why, but it's interesting. Right now, these streaming services are spending tons and tons of money trying to build up their content library. If there's a shot at there being more of the animated version of She-Ra, it's probably, I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking it's with Peacock because it's DreamWorks. And it might be that the people working on the show are like, well, shit, Peacock's cutting checks. Let's drum up more interest in...
Again, Peacock. If you want to make money and actually be competitive... Listen to what I'm telling you, not to what Twitter's telling you.
Put Geeky in charge.
Because Twitter is full of shit, and Twitter is not indicative, like we're saying with why The Last Man and everything else. They're all like, well, Twitter loves it. No, it doesn't fucking matter. I'm sorry, Mom. It doesn't fucking matter because the real world isn't Twitter. Twitter is so like a tiny percentage, and it doesn't represent the audiences at large at all. At all. And so you're like listening to this small group of people that are sniffing each other's assholes on Twitter all the time. And then you're like, all you're doing is like, that's
among other things.
Yeah. That's the echo chamber you don't want to be part of.
Yeah.
And, you're listening to these people and you're not actually like, and then you're surprised when they don't do well with audiences at large because they are not indicative of audiences at large.
Stop, for God's sake, stop hiring social media managers and marketing people that are all of 23 years old, fresh out of college, to tell you what's hot right now, because a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. I think a lot of these executives are going to get burnt by TikTok because there's a lot of shit coming out now about TikTok, taking their creators for a ride.
Well, not just that. TikTok itself is so full. You talk about misinformation and bullshit. You go to TikTok, that's rife with it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just don't listen to this. What I'm telling you is, if you're going to use a property that has an established fan base, and you want to update it, you can. But you need to find a happy medium that makes it feel like it remains true to the source material. And the problem they had with Why the Last Man, besides the fact that it was really obscure and I think it was an uphill battle to begin with, you changed too much and you made it too current year and that just turned off the old fans. And then I never even heard of it before. And when I saw it, I rolled my eyes. I was like, what the hell is this? And people are their backs are up now. Because they're so tired of being preached at, and you can't have fun and entertainment anymore because you're being preached at all times, that when they see this, they immediately turn their nose. It could have been good. Who knows? They're not even going to look at it twice. That's what the Hollywood needs to learn.
Anyway, let's go back to why, because this is a very brutal lesson here. They said, the viewing trend wasn't the only reason behind the cancellation. They said their contracts were up. No, it was, because they're going to be like, is it worth...
They're trying to save face.
Right. Why the Last Man's long, winding road to getting on air didn't help in that regard. The contracts were up. They said they landed the rights in 2015. That's pretty much when the comic peaked, was 2014, 2015. Ordered a pilot in 2018. They had to recast people. They had creative changes.
Creative changes. Yeah, there was a lot of those.
Creative changes at Disney. Imagine that. A Disney-owned company. Imagine that. They replaced the lead. Eliza Clark came on as showrunner in June 2019. The pandemic pushed the start of the production back again with cameras. Look, cut the shit. Stop the excuses. If the show was good, people would have watched it regardless of how long it took to get it made or who the star was or
word of mouth would have brought people back. It would have gone up, it might have dipped and then gone back up. It wouldn't have just plummeted to really, really declined.
Yeah, I mean, this has happened before. I mean, for God's sake, Netflix has resuscitated shows that have been off the air for 15, 20 years. Multiple occasions. We have multiple instances of Netflix bringing back shows because they know there's an audience for more. Fox has done this. They've done it with, Futurama and Family Guy, and they've brought shows back from the dead before. X-Files. They brought X-Files back. So this is bullshit. The reality is the show went over like a lead balloon, and that's it. It's over.
Lead balloon. My family always says lead fart.
I was trying to think how a fart could be made of lead.
They always said it would never like a lead fart. I don't understand that either, but that's what they always say.
Because a fart is gaseous, a balloon is actually
They also say fart intermittent, so I don't know
maybe there's
that
a lead
either,
fart inside the balloon, which is why the balloon drops.
Maybe.
Like a Led Zeppelin.
Like, what were you eating? Okay, it doesn't matter.
See, that's what Led Zeppelin went over like a Led Zeppelin. Except, we say balloon.
Okay, we'll go with lead balloon. I like it better. No offense, Mom.
Anyway, ultimately, FX declined to pay $3 million to further extend options, not wanting to leave the cast in limbo. Bullshit. They're like, the show is tanking.
It's costing us too much money. It's not getting the views, and we're moving on. Sources
told The Hollywood Reporter at the time the decision was driven more by those considerations than by viewer data. Sources. He flat out said the audience decline was really
directly
steep.
From the person in charge.
These executives, they need to be more blunt with people.
Yes, you need to be blunt with these people because they think there's any little teeny bit of a wiggle room and they're going to try to take everything they can get.
It's kind of like Dumb and Dumber. It's like, so what you're saying is there is a chance?
There's a chance. Yes, that's exactly what it's like.
You know?
Yes.
I mean, it's like, come on. No, there's no chance. The show failed. Cowboy Bebop. There was a lot of buzz around it. It failed in a lot of cases. Maybe not so much in the case of Y, but definitely in the case of Cowboy Bebop. Audiences hated the show before it even premiered because the people working on the show saying dumb shit and being antagonistic. I'm looking at you, being antagonistic.
Even She-Ra. I mean, like, people might have been more willing to give the show a chance for the new show, but you already turned off a bunch of people because right from the get-go, the PR was, if you have any qualms about this show or you don't like anything about it, it's because you're a misogynistic, instaphobic, incelic, whatever person.
Incelic.
That's my new word.
Tom
Person.
Incelic.
And you're a terrible person. So, and it's not because our show might not be what you want. It's because you're terrible. And because he did that, it already caused a big rift with people before they even watched the show.
Where the fuck are these people going to college that this is what they're being taught for marketing? Like, this is, I don't even know what the term is for this marketing technique. It's basically piss off the audience, piss off the potential audience as much as possible, or chase off 3/4 of the audience so you get the audience you want. But the reality is that the numbers aren't there to sustain the show. And yeah, She-Ra was a prime example. Like, immediately there was really, people were complaining, but like the best thing to do would be to just put the show out there and not say anything. And sure as hell don't
build
dunk
bridges, not burn bridges.
Right. And don't dunk on the original voice actors. Don't dunk on the people who created the show, the original show.
That's why I started speaking up because, I mean, okay, I already knew. Like, I had the privilege of knowing who the hell was doing it and I knew exactly what to expect, and it was exactly what I thought it would be. So when I found out it was Noel Stevenson, I was like, shit. That's exactly what I said. And so my expectations were already rock bottom. But when I saw how they were treating people and the old fans especially, and making it out like, oh, if you like this, are you a diverse person? I'm like, the fandom has always been diverse and very inclusive and accepting. So this is a flat out lie, and they're vilifying and lying and targeting people and they're bullying. And I cannot stand bullying. And when they started bullying right from the get-go, I was like, oh, hell to the no. And that's what, that's what happened with Cowboy Bebop. They had the actors out there bullying people. And it's like, maybe, just maybe, if you keep your fucking mouth shut, maybe people would actually give your show a chance. But you already have their backs up before it even starts because your attitude is balls. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's vagina because you're not allowed to have balls.
Well, if you have both, you have the balls.
Well, some people do.
Yes, they do.
So I'm like, you're not allowed to have, balls. That's misogynistic. It's vagina. Your attitude's vagina.
Your opinions are pussy.
Yeah.
That's all they are. Smelly pussy.
That's right.
Anyway.
Unwashed kind, as I say.
Unwashed pussy. Your opinions stink of unwashed. Okay, this is getting bad. But no, I'm just like, yeah, I don't understand this. This is a very like current year thing. And this is what happens when you have, and these journalists especially, when you think you have job security for the rest of your life, you're fresh out of college, you get handed a $100,000 a year job writing hit pieces for some upstart digital magazine, right? And
but you had nothing to do with building.
You had nothing to do with building it. And you think you're going to have that job forever. You think you're...
Or it's a stepping stone to the next one.
Yeah. And a lot of companies are finding out the hard way that, yeah, you take away the venture capital, you have to depend on the audience. And if you chase away 3/4 of the audience, well, then you're shit out of luck, aren't you?
Well, you get what you deserve. So hope you listen to what we're telling you.
So the market always self-corrects. And at the end of the day, you have to have money. And to have money,
you have to have a market.
You have to have a market. And the days of the venture capital flowing like water, they're over. Ask BuzzFeed how that's going for them. And these streaming services are highly competitive now. And especially a science fiction show that's expensive, they're going to look at the numbers and they're going to be like, yep, it is not worth it.
Nope.
Not worth it anymore. So I'm going to wrap this up.
Yep.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.